Hi, this is a tutorial on using the REST API of the AI-on-Demand Metadata Catalogue. You may find this tutorial useful if you're looking to have programmatic access to the metadata catalog. For example, when you're developing a service for AI on demand, or when you want to have programmatic access in your research. If you're just looking to browse assets in the metadata catalog, or maybe upload metadata to the catalog, then we advise you to use the resources service that's available on the AI-on-Demand portal. You can find this documentation page for the REST API on api.aiod.eu. This will automatically bring you to the docs page. These are documentations generated by Swagger, and you might have come across similar pages before. On this page, you will find all of the endpoints that are available in the REST API, and you can find for each asset type very similar endpoints. You have an endpoint to list all of the resources of that type. You have an endpoint that tells how many assets of that type are available in the metadata catalog, an endpoint to get a specific resource from the metadata catalog, and two endpoints which allow you to filter based on different platforms from which the metadata originates. If we want more information about any individual endpoint, we can click on the chevron to expand the box. This will give us a description of the endpoint, the parameters of the endpoint, and the types of values that they expect, and an example of a successful response, as well as of the errors. We can even go here in the successful response example to the schema to get more information on the types of values which we may expect to be returned. So it's just the maximum length for the different text fields. We can also use this page to query the REST API directly. So when we go again to this expanded documentation of the educational resources endpoint, and we click try it out, now it shows cancel. After you click it, then the execute button becomes enabled, and when we click it, we actually send the query to the REST API. We will get an example of how to execute the same request using curl. The full request URL, including the set parameters, and the actual response returned by the server. In this case, we asked it for 10 educational resources, and we see here the list with information about each individual resource. The first educational resource, for example, is on 1D convolutional neural networks, and it is some kind of a lecture. The description is available. There are things like keywords, and whatever fields are available depends on the type of assets that you have. So again, the fields you might expect are provided in the schema under the example. There are also different endpoints available to upload or update assets to the metadata catalog. I will show a demonstration of this on a local instance that I have of the metadata catalog, so that I do not have to publish example data to our server. But otherwise, the experience should be much the same. First, I go to the top of the documentation page and I click Authorize. I navigate to the authorization with PKCE and I click Authorize. It looks like I still had a token that was valid, so it automatically logged me in based on a previous login attempt. But otherwise, you will be taken to a check-in page where you can provide your login credentials and authenticate with the servers. You will now see on the documentation page that the endpoints which require authorization have a closed and solid black padlock next to it. We can now make also requests that require authentication to the REST API. Let's upload a case study to AI-on-Demand. Again, a brief reminder, we're uploading it to a local version of my server, so you will not find this asset if you search for it. But when we click Try It Out Now, we have a pre-filled request body, which has example data for the different things we may want to include in the metadata of a resource. Let's change the name. a case study on using the Metadata Catalogue REST API for service development. When we click execute, we again get information on how to format the curl request should we want to do this, for example, from the command line. One thing of note, when we have authorized endpoints and when we need authentication, we provide this in the HTTP header of the HTTP request. We have a successful response, and the case study we uploaded was a site identifier 1. We can also see this asset when we request the identifier, the asset for the identifier. So here we get the successful response, and we see here indeed that we get the asset back that says a case study on using the Metadata Catalogue REST API for service development. So you'll find similar endpoints for all the different asset types. We also provide a few endpoints which connect to an Elasticsearch backend. You can find these under the search header, and these allow you for these typically give a faster response, but they do not provide all of the metadata from an asset like the other endpoints do. There's an option for this. If you set get all, then it will do this database request for you. But if you just need the metadata which is already indexed on the Elasticsearch, your request will be much faster. So really consider whether or not you want to retrieve all of the data or just the most relevant metadata. There's also different endpoints for reviewing and for users. The user endpoint, for example, shows you all the assets uploaded by the user. Here we see the case study that we uploaded, as well as the educational resource. This educational resource was uploaded previously. So this concludes a brief introduction to the REST API of the Metadata Catalogue. If you have any questions, please let us know. You can reach out to us, for example, through our forums, or if you experience bugs, you can also visit the GitHub page for the Metadata Catalogue. If you're interested in, for example, running the Metadata Catalogue locally for your own development, you can find the link at the top of the page here. This brings you to our GitHub documentation page, which has more information when you actually want to host the Metadata Catalogue locally for development, or even when you want to develop something in the Metadata Catalogue. But it's generally speaking not needed when you just want to develop using the REST API of the AI-on-Demand Metadata Catalogue. We're looking forward to seeing what kind of services you build using the REST API.